from Anaheim, but he is a former member of many of the globalist organizations which few ever hear about. He has provided briefings to NATO personnel regarding less than lethal and non-lethal technology, and he has provided counterterrorism training to personnel from many federal and local law enforcement agencies. He is both a retired U.S. Marine Corps Mustang infantry officer as well as a retired LAPD patrol supervisor who is an FBI certified range master. He's also served as a technical advisor for several popular Hollywood movies. And since retiring, in his words now, he's returned to life as he, quote now, a lazy surfing beach bum where he spends most of his time coaching and mentoring some of the most successful young female surfers from around the world. Mark from Anaheim, welcome back to WOL Radio.
What's up? How you doing, Mr. Nelson?
Doing great.
Happy birthday to Gregory.
That's true. He would have been 85 today.
Yeah, he's out there partying with Michael Jackson right now. I went out to Area 51 to go see them, but I wasn't allowed to go into the concert.
Well, maybe
one. I'm sure he's down. I'm sure he's watching down on us and seeing whether or not we're keeping truth to power. And you know, so much.
Let's dedicate the show to him then.
Gee, now why would I even think about that? The only reason I came on this show today because it's his birthday. I'm retired from this radio show. You keep bringing me back. But it was Brother Greg's birthday, so out of respect for Dick Gregory, of course I'm dedicating this show to the memory of Greg. Some folks used to call him Baba. We all have so many nicknames for him, just like he has so many nicknames for me. And, you know, it's been tough. I'm still dealing with the fact that he's no longer with us. And Mrs. sarcastic telephone calls. They were a lot more fun and a lot more interesting and a lot more provocative than we could ever do on air. And yeah, I'm just taking one day at a time.
Right. Had he lived, Greg would have been 85 today. And tomorrow, actually, out where you are, out in Los Angeles, they're going to show his play. His play is going to open up there from October 13th to November the 19th. The play, of course, is called Turn Me Loose. Joe Morton playing Dick Gregory. And so it's going to be shown, the play starts tomorrow. And somewhere in Beverly Hills, somewhere in Beverly Hills. We'll get you the exact place.
I've been promoting it on several of my Facebook sites.
Oh, yeah. It's the Lovelace Studio Theater in Beverly Hills. That's where it is. You're right.
Yeah, and, so you know, a lot of folks who, if the name doesn't ring a bell for you, Joe's the one who plays the father with the nefarious background on the TV show Scandal. Of course, he was also another brother, a brother from another planet. I mean, he's been in a lot of movies and television shows, but I was happy to see this play that he's been doing now for a while, and it's been getting some very, very good reviews.
Right. He did a piece of it, too, at the Going Home services for Greg. He just did a little skit, so, you know, people just sort of people remember what Dick Gregory was all about. And he sounded pretty good.
He's a very professional individual, and I'm happy to see that he's the person who is out there keeping Greg's memory alive. Right. And that's what we all have to do. We have to keep his memory alive. Like the sister was saying earlier, you know, unfortunately in our society today here in this country, we don't seem to be maintaining that respect for our elders as we used to in the past. And we have to keep those memories alive because a lot of folks coming up are not going to know who Dick Gregory was personally, so they're going to have to know from us who he was.
Right, and let me just take it once more. You know, one of his last public appearances was at the Power Talk conference in June. And we have those DVDs available now, along with Tony Browder, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Patricia Newton, Dr. James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Umar Johnson. They're all on there. In fact, part of on the tape, too, Tony Browder takes them on a tour of the Black History Museum as well. So all of that, for more information, just go to powertalkseries.com. But Mark, what can you tell us about this Las Vegas shooting? Some people are saying that it was a false flag. It didn't happen. There are all sorts of inconsistencies going on about the shooting. What do you know?
Well, it definitely happened. I mean, I know people who were shot. I'm no stranger to the honky-tonk community. I had my Marine Corps retirement in a honky-tonk. And I'm the administrator for 3 honky-tonk Facebook sites. So I know a lot of cowboys, cowgirls, and rednecks. I know a lot of people who were in Vegas that night. I know a lot of, in fact, LAPD had 66 off-duty cops there. There were a whole lot of off-duty cops and firefighters there. So for anybody who says it didn't happen, then I suggest they stop listening to folks like Alex Jones, you know.
So were they working or were they just going to party?
No, they were just going to the concert. You know, if Barack Hussein Obama hadn't been elected, I probably would have been at that concert. Once President Obama was elected, the racism within the country music and the honky-tonk communities was so blatant and overt that by 2009, I stopped going to all the country music concerts and I stopped going to rodeos. And I've been featured in Professional Bull Rider magazine. So, I mean, like I said, I'm no stranger to the country music scene, but even though I still am the administrator for 3 honky-tonk sites, I rarely go to any of them anymore because, no pun intended, but some folks really started showing their true colors once they saw a Negro in the White House.
How about now? Do you think they've changed now?
Oh, no.
Now that Donald Trump's in the White House?
In fact, they've ramped it up with Donald Trump in the White House because now they feel as if they have validation for their bigotry and even misogyny, because a lot of these folks, they're not very kind to their women, and which is probably another reason why I was so popular in the honky-tonk, because I had a lot of white girls who would use me as their big brothers to ward off some knucklehead that they used to be married to or some ex-boyfriend who was just, didn't know how to treat women. A lot of domestic violence in that culture, so a lot of domestic violence, and it's sad because the women just, they keep going back to these guys, and, anyway. So, I mean, with the Weinstein thing, I don't know why people are acting so shocked as women. Hey, I coach female surfers, and I tell them, I'm going to be polite for... No, Greg says never use this word. I ain't going to use it. Women in surfing are the niggas of surfing, and they know that, and that's why I'm there, because nobody else gives them the love and attention I give them. They get no respect. They get very few sponsorships. I coach them for free when most of them can't afford a coach, and women get treated like crap in this country. And how can you treat a woman like crap? Because everybody has to come from a woman. I know they want to do their test tube babies and scientists now, but you can truly tell a society, you gauge a society by how they treat their women, or as the sister said earlier, how they treat their elders. And more importantly, Mr. Nelson, look how many people a day are on some kind of opioid prescription drug. And it's kind of ironic, when this Vegas shooting happened, folks who wanted to stop any political agenda towards any further gun control, as they call it, or laws related to maybe curbing back some of this, they're actually citing, well, actually, more people get killed by handguns, and the number one killer when it comes to firearms is suicide. That's something to brag about? What does that say about a society when now more people have committed suicide than those dying in car accidents? We are a very sick society, sir. And that was definitely demonstrated last Sunday with that guy in Vegas. So, false flag for you folks out there. All I can tell you is this. Mr. Nelson, one of your avid listeners is the brother-in-law of the black police officer who was off duty, who was shot and killed there. So for you folks out there talking your false flag crap, you got a brother listening to this show today who's related to somebody who was killed there. So after the break, we'll discuss this some more.
All right, cool. 800-450-7876. We're going to take a look at the traffic and weather in the DMV. Folks, speak to Mark from Anaheim, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls next on FM Hour. Just staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. We're discussing the shooting in Las Vegas. So, Mark, go ahead and tell us about the person who was, because, like I said, some people are saying it's a false flag, but you said that actually somebody who's connected or listens to the show who's related to one of the victims? Is Mark there?
He follows me on Facebook, and while folks want to put this out there like this is a whole bunch of poor white trash, honky-tonk crowd, white-only people, that crowd was very diverse. While you and Stevie Wonder were preparing for Greg's farewell, his homecoming, I couldn't deal with it, and I chose to hide out here in Southern California, and I went to a major surf contest out here just to try to keep my mind off of Greg. Excuse me. And, it was interesting because there were folks there who apparently could tell that I was definitely not my regular self, because I had so many people who I didn't even know who took the time to come up and say hi to me or asked to take photographs of me because they'd heard about me. And there was one particular female surfer. She's from St. Martin, where they got hit hard by Hurricane Irma, and I've coached her in the past, and I thank God she was there, because without her realizing this, she was helping me to maintain my sanity while not thinking about Greg's farewell and his homecoming. So at that concert, there were folks, just as that surfer, she was from France. While I was at that concert, I met somebody from Canada who didn't know at the time, and now we're friends. And she was also someone else who, without knowing, it helped me maintain my sanity. And I say this to you because at that concert, there were no less than 6, if not 7 people from Canada who were killed. This was it wasn't a concert, it was a festival that had been going on for 3 days. So you had people from all over the United States as well as outside the United States. You had folks there who were European Americans, you had folks there who were Latinos, and you had African Americans there too. And one of the first people who was killed in that tragic incident was a brother who was an off-duty cop from Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. So for people talking their crap, I don't know what the hell they're coming from. In fact, I run a Facebook site that I dedicate to the Montford Point Marines, Buffalo Soldiers, and the Tuskegee Airmen. And I have made a collage of photographs that were provided to me by his family. There were some photographs I chose not to use because I just thought they were too personal. There were actually photographs that the family sent me that they took at that concert shortly before the shooting happened. And but there were some photographs I did use. One of him as a U.S. Army, also a photograph of him as a Las Vegas Metropolitan Police officer, and also the fact that he has already written a book that if there's any good thing to come out of this tragic incident, the sale of his book now has increased because more people have become aware of it. But I use his photograph, that collage that I made of him, I use as the profile photograph now for my Facebook site that I dedicate to the Buffalo Soldiers, Montford Point Marines, Tuskegee Airmen.
Right. You know, we just want to give a shout out to some of the folks who are listening to us in the barbershop out in Shaker Heights, and there in Cleveland, the suburb of Cleveland. The brothers out there, Ricky and the brothers, are listening. Also, the Clippers Barbershop in Meridian, Connecticut. Also, the barbershop in Durham, North Carolina, also listening to us. And also, Johan, who used to work in Los Angeles with John and Ken, is now in Goodyear, Arizona, is listening to what she just had to tell you hi. I just wanted to know that all these people are tuning in to hear you.
That's scary. You said Ohio, huh? How about ask the brothers back at the barbershop in Ohio, what's going on with all these white folks out there? Because they have to pass laws now. So much of this is going on. They're passing laws in the state of Ohio to stop sleeping with dogs.
Wow.
I'm not making that up, by the way. There's a lot of bestiality going on in Ohio right now. I wish I was joking, but anyway.
Well, hang on a second, Mark, because Michael, the officer's brother-in-law, is on line 3. His brother, I think it was got killed by the Las Vegas shooter on line 3. Michael, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Carl. Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Hey, brother. One day at a time, man.
Yeah, thank you for that nice collage that you did on Facebook. I really appreciate that.
Well, Michael, let me ask you this. What do you say to people who say that it was a false flag, it didn't happen? Your response?
No, it's not a false flag. It did happen. And still trying to wrap myself around, why us and the family. It's just kind of hard to comprehend right now. But it is true, though, but there are some flags out there that is just... that I've seen on Facebook and YouTube about 2 different shooters coming from the 12th floor and the 32nd floor. So, and I went there because I tried to, I'm trying to get in touch with, called you yesterday, Mark, though, but left a message, though. But one of the superintendents from Louisiana High, when we had the presentation for Charleston there, they did a dedication to him. And he's an ex-police officer, and he was saying that he was listening to the 911 calls and that there were calls coming out from different casinos trying to distract the Las Vegas Metro from going to the Mandalay Bay. And there were 911 calls coming from different casinos trying to confuse them.
And I think that's what led to some of the confusion where people thought there were shootings going on at other locations.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But and another thing I want to touch on that the ironic thing that because we were out there help planning the funeral because his funeral is next Friday on the 20th. But Charleston a year ago today he wrote his obituary how he wanted his funeral to play out, and his wife just happened to be on the computer and ran across that, and we just thought that was pretty ironic.
I don't know how you're dealing, brother. You know, I can't even imagine the pain you're suffering right now, and it's really it's been tough for me. I have some folks who I still have not heard from because I'm assuming that some of these cell phones got trampled and stomped. That perhaps people who are wounded are in hospitals, and the hospitals only contacted next of kin, of course, and so those folks haven't really reached out to other folks who they may not be thinking about right now, who are thinking about them. But there are quite a few people who I knew at that concert who I still have not heard from. I haven't seen their names on the list of fatalities, but also that list of fatalities may go up because one of the problems they're having, several of the people who were shot are now suffering from what Brother Gregory died from, bacterial infection.
Yeah, because Charleston, they said after he was trying to help people and then he was shielding his wife, he got shot in the back, just one bullet, and it traveled through, went through his lungs and pierced his heart, so he just died instantly when that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Mark, help us out on the logistics on this, though, because...
I'm sorry, but I guess I had no idea the brother was going to call in, so I'm just glad you did call in, brother, because, people need to stop with the crap, man. When you got folks like this brother on the phone that's going through pain right now, they don't need to hear this crap about it didn't really happen. Seriously, And there's a lot of pain and suffering going on, because, folks, let me tell you, it's sad enough that we had 58 people who were murdered. But you've got hundreds of others who are wounded, and their lives are never going to be the same. They're going to be screwed. Who knows how many of them have already lost their jobs because their bosses don't even know they're one of the victims in the hospital. There's a lot of pain, and this is reaching out all over. There's just so many. My daughter's her employer provided counseling for them because my daughter had so many friends at that concert. I don't know if I was the first person, but I know I was definitely one of the first persons to even report this on Facebook because, that's just my curse. And this thing supposedly has started going down around 8 minutes after 10 p.m. And I sent my first Facebook notice out around 10:20 p.m. to all my law enforcement sites, especially the ones close to the public, as well as my honky-tonk sites, because I knew a lot of people on the honky-tonk sites, they had friends and relatives if they themselves weren't there. And all I sent out was one sentence. Active shooter at the Country Western Concert in Las Vegas. Contact me and let me know you're okay. That's all I put out because I didn't have any personal information. But the thing is, I was here. I'm awake. Most people were asleep during that time. And so I was watching the live feed out of Vegas from 11 o'clock until 2:30 in the morning. I'll just tell you, a lot of what I saw and heard during those live feeds is not what I'm seeing and hearing now. So there's just so much misinformation, disinformation has been provided out there, and I'm not going to come on this show and speculate. What I will say for the listeners out there, based on my background, based on my experience, based on all the things that I know, as soon as I heard about this shooter, he reminds me of the character portrayed by Mickey Rourke in a movie called White Sands. So for you listeners out there, if you've never seen the movie, there's a movie with Samuel Jackson, William Dafoe, Mickey Rourke called White Sands. I've been recommending that movie for the last 10 plus years. And this guy sounds a lot like the character played by Mickey Rourke. He was a federal employee at one time, and one of his jobs was working for the agency that acquires weapons and equipment for the Department of Defense. And he was a defense contractor, so he had access to all kinds of stuff. Who knows what he had access to?
All right, and Brother Jamal just hit us on the line and says, to say something is a false flag is not to say the incident or event did not happen. False flagging means the purported intent may not be the real agenda behind the event or the incident. So I think there's a little difference there. But I'll let you tackle that on the other side, because you hear the drummers warming up, telling us we got to take a break. Michael, you can stay with us if you want. 800-450-7876. You too can speak tomorrow from Anaheim. Just dedicate the entire show to Dick Gregory. Reach out to us right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. It came down that Ezekiel Elliott's 6-game suspension is back on for now, so he's out of all this dealing about kneeling, so we're going to have to see about that this weekend. But anyway, Mark, I'm going to let you respond to what Jamal tweeted about the false flag, and if you know any information about the alleged shooter.
Okay, when you asked initially about false flag and said it didn't happen, I went from that direction because I don't know how certain people are using the definition. Normally when the term false flag is used, what some folks suggest is one organization is given the blame for a tragic incident when in fact it was done by some other organization, perhaps to accomplish some type of political motivation. And basically, I'll just tell you personally, I believe much of what you've been hearing about so-called Muslim terrorism in Europe are false flags. I find it interesting that a guy can wear a suicide vest bomb, blows himself to smithereens, but they find his passport in pristine condition right next to him. You know, it's like Christopher Dorner in a Big Bear cabin. The cabin's burned beyond recognition. Nobody could be identified. Oh, but we find his California driver's license in pristine condition in the ashes. Okay, that dog don't hunt. So, and then there was one of the terrorist attacks that occurred on Friday the 13th. Well, you know, with my background, I know that's all about Jacques de Molay. And when you talk about certain Masonic organizations over there and how they were burned at the stake and tried to be eliminated on certain dates. Dates are very important to certain individuals. Another terrorist bombing in France happened on March 22nd. Well, duh. I know March 22nd, the numbers for March 22nd are 322. 322 are the numbers you see on the skull and crossbones for the organization out of New Haven, Connecticut, Skull and Crossbones. So a lot of these things don't happen by accident. If you look at many of your so-called major shootings like Columbine, you look at Oklahoma City bombing, those all happen on or around April 19th, 20th, or 21st because they're not really sure what day is Hitler's birthday, and they purposely do these events on certain dates that they think is Hitler's birthday. So dates are very important. You know, a lot of folks talked about the fact that O.J. Simpson was released from prison. Well, you know, the murders in West L.A. happened on June 12, 1994. You add those numbers up, you come up with the jersey number 32. Where'd the shooter shoot from, Mr. Nelson?
Well, what you mean, what floor?
Yeah.
Was you the 33rd? Don't tell me it was the 33rd.
32.
32?
Now, 32 is the York Rite Masons. Most of those folks in that crowd, if they had any Masonic connection, they would be from the Scottish Rite. The first civil war we had in this country were the York Rite versus the Scottish Rite. Even LAPD went through this crap. Darrell Gates, you know, when we had LAPD funerals, they were all held at the Scottish Rite Temple. When LAPD got taken over by the York Rite, first they brought in York Rite Masonic boy from Philadelphia, Willie Williams. Later on, you got York Rite boy, William Bratton. In fact, if you go to New York City, William Bratton's portrait hangs on the wall in the headquarters for the York Rite. By the way, I mean, the city is called New York. So if you folks not really into studying this type of stuff, you wouldn't know. You know, I could watch a movie like Star Wars and tell you all the Masonic symbols in it, okay? And I'm not a Mason. Never been a traveling man, never will be. In fact, many of them think I'm some reincarnated Confederate general because they can't understand how I could know so much about Masonry. They come to me for questions and answers, and I've never been a traveling man. So I'm just saying, when I look at these things, I see a lot of parallels to basically the Civil War may have already started in this country, and you folks don't realize it yet. And those folks who were shot there in Vegas, they would represent the Scottish Rite, while somebody shooting from the 32nd floor might be representing the York Rite. I'm just letting you know. I'm just telling you seriously. There were a husband and wife out of Vegas, originally from Indiana. They were at the Clive and Bundy Ranch, and they went into Las Vegas a couple years back, shot 2 white cops, killed them who were just sitting there eating lunch. And for all you gun nuts out there who want to talk about, oh, well, if there's somebody else there with a gun, well, first of all, cops have guns. So I get sick and tired of folks saying these kind of things don't happen when people have guns, and you could damn well believe there were people at that concert. But anyway, the 2 cops were killed. A good Samaritan in Vegas who was armed, he came on the scene, and they killed him too. So you got 3 dead people there. And then this couple from the Clive and Bundy Ranch drew SWAT stickers all over the dead cops' bodies and said the revolution has begun. See, so when you hear these right-wing radio stations, they don't tell you what I'm telling you right now. All they talk about is Black Lives Matter. I'm going to tell you again, I have yet to find one cop who's been murdered since Black Lives Matter was created, where any of those cops who were murdered, the killer had any direct ties to Black Lives Matter. So if you want to talk about a false flag that maybe Jamal's alluding to, many of these so-called killings are cops that right-wing radio is so quick to say, Black Lives Matter. Even the guy in Dallas, Texas, who killed 5 cops, that guy was not a member of Black Lives Matter. In fact, he specifically stated he despised Black Lives Matter because he said Black Lives Matter did nothing but talk, and he wanted action. And yet these folks to this day still lie and say, because I heard Alex Jones just say it last week again, that Black Lives Matter were responsible for the 5 cops who were killed in Dallas. Now, I find it interesting, if you take that example, nobody talks about the fact that this black guy was somebody who should have gotten a dishonorable discharge from the Army, but somehow his dishonorable discharge just kind of like disappeared, and he didn't get a dishonorable, which gave him the ability to still purchase weapons after he was taken out of the Army. And there's a whole lot more about that case that you don't hear anybody anymore, not to mention the fact that they used a robot with a bomb to kill the guy. So now we've sanctioned killing people instead of hostage negotiation. And I want to tell you something that's going to come. Mark my words, this is October 12th. So you remember I told you this today. I can damn well guarantee you that after this Las Vegas shooting, they're going to start now being able to justify using drones against U.S. citizens, because they would have said, well, if he had drones in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department that night, perhaps that drone being armed would not put officers in harm's way, and they would have been able to neutralize the suspect. I already see it coming. Just like they've already made case law where they can use a robot with a bomb on it to kill a suspect instead of doing a hostage negotiation and taking the suspect into custody.
And now, because when the shooting came down, some people were saying that maybe that he was he was some sort of under mind control or something. Do we know anything about the alleged killer? I
don't speculate on mind control. I'm going to tell you facts. This is what I know. I've spoken to people who were in Vegas who told me they saw more than one suspect. And these suspects weren't upstairs. There were suspects downstairs. I told you I watched the live feed. I watched the woman being interviewed live who ran so far she didn't even know where she was and had to call her dad because she knew she couldn't go back to get a car, and she saw the first cross street sign that she could find, and she called her dad, and she's waiting for her dad to pick her up. And this is what she said, and she was adamant, and she repeated this 3 different times, never wavered. First, she talked about how they started running after the shooting started, how she got trampled because the guys were running over women to get out of there, how they made it as far as the Las Vegas airport and knocked the wall down at the airport. But this is what I will always remember about what she said that night. And she said it on 3 different occasions during her conversation. She never wavered, and she never changed her tune. You know what she said, Mr. Nelson?
No, what did she say?
We were being followed by one of the shooters. So all I'm telling you is, I'm not here today to speculate because I wasn't there. I'm just letting you know what I watched live and what I'm hearing and watching now is just totally different. But, you know, for you folks out there who used to pay attention to Brother Dick Gregory, he used to always tell you, as soon as you hear the first blurps of something major getting ready to go down, turn your TVs on live, because what you watch live is not going to be the same later. And this to give you an idea how live this was, Mr. Nelson, there were news reporters who had to apologize because many of the people being interviewed was using profanity because they didn't have time to edit it. I'm talking live. While most of you folks were asleep that night, I'm watching this live. And what I'm watching live and what I saw and heard later is nothing close to what I was watching when it was live. But I've actually talked to folks who I personally know who had relatives there who told me there was more than one shooter. I'm just letting you know what they told me.
Yeah, there's a rumor that the shooter is connected or well known to somebody that we know.
See, this is why I miss Greg for so many reasons. Folks, let me explain this, okay? Right now, Greg would be doing this show. And what you folks would know is Greg would be doing this show based on our telephonic conversation. And now I don't have Greg to run interference so it doesn't come back on me. This is what Greg and I did for like the last 25 years, for you folks don't know it. Something would go down, Greg and I would have hours-long conversations on the telephone. Then he would go out and put out the message, and it would never come back as if I was the one saying it. And nobody ever knew. Now I don't have Greg, so now Mr. Nelson's put me on the spot. I'll just say this, okay? Back in December, Dick Gregory and I appeared on a show together with Mr. Nelson to tell you all how the elections were stolen. Donald Trump didn't win the election. And initially, when we had that show,
hold that thought right there, because we're coming up on a break.
This is going to be good.
I know. So I'm going to do this. Hey, if you're out there, call a couple of your friends and tell them to check us out right here. If you're in the DMV, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. If you're listening around the world, WOLDCnews.com. I'm guaranteeing this is going to be great. Folks, you too can speak to Mark from Anaheim. Reach out to us. It's 800-450-7876. We'll take your phone calls after this traffic and weather update on FM 95.9 and AM 1450, WOL, where information is power. Folks, we're dedicating the whole show to Dick Gregory. Today would have been his 85th birthday. And as I mentioned earlier, the play that Joe Morton stars in, produced by John Legend, is going to open in Los Angeles tomorrow. I just say Southern California, actually Beverly Hills, the Lovelace Studio Theater, 9390 North Santa Monica Boulevard in Beverly Hills. It's a sort of a small theater, an intimate setting. For those of you who are like Dick Gregory, I suggest you see it, because he did part of the show at Greg's going home ceremony. And at least one of the last times that Greg was live was at the Power Talk 4 conference in June in D.C., along with Tony Browder, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Pat Newton, Dr. James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Dr. Umar Johnson was there, and a lot more other folks are there, and their DVDs are now available. Just go to powertalkseries.com. Let's see. Michael, we're going to let you go because we've been holding you for a while. Michael, again, was the brother-in-law of the officer that was shot by the Las Vegas shooter. Michael, thank you, and our condolences to you and your family, and let's hope we can all of us can pull through all of this. But thank you for verifying that it was a real deal.
All right. Appreciate that, Carl. Thank you. All right, Mark. Talk to you later.
One day at a time, bro. All right.
All right, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to tell the listeners this. There are some things that I have shared with folks who are present in former law enforcement out here that I'm not going to share with you. Because, one, they haven't been confirmed, but they're things that we, with my background, would have a greater appreciation for, because we're trying to figure out what the hell happened to. I have LAPD cops who are on my closed sites to the public, and one did have the moral courage to say that that officer was present at the scene, and what that officer is saying now is not what that officer remembered that night. We did have an LAPD officer who was shot. She works Foothill Division, and she's going to be okay. But in regards to what Carl was alluding to before the break, back in December, Greg and I appeared on the Carl Nelson show, and initially what I thought was going to be Greg, myself, and this third guest. But what Carl actually did was bring Greg and me on first for the first 2 hours, and then brought this other guest on in the third hour. So I ended up calling back in to talk to him. So that guest that Carl is referring to put me on the spot. There's a gentleman named Greg Pallas, and I have a lot of respect for Greg Pallas because he's one of the few people out there who is telling you how elections have been stolen. Now, I was doing radio shows with Mr. Nelson back in 1992 talking about how elections were being stolen. And about 6 months after I first came on Carl's show telling him how elections were being stolen, the Collier brothers wrote a book called Vote Scam, showing how elections were stolen and how it was really being done down in Florida. Now, Janet Reno was the state attorney general at the time. When she finally looked into it, she stated that what they said was true, the statute of limitations had run out, so she couldn't do anything. Then, of course, Bill Clinton made her U.S. attorney general later. Well, Greg Palast has written books on this subject called The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. He also has a video out. And if you're not aware of this, he has a new video that's coming out, a more updated, revised. But he clearly shows, literally hundreds of thousands of blacks, Latinos, Asians, who are legitimate registered voters and how their names are removed off the roster. Well, what I don't think any listeners hearing the show today know, and in fact, until I called Carl this morning and told him, Greg Palast went to high school with the shooter. Because I don't think, in fact, Carl didn't know, the shooter from Vegas went to school out here at Polytech High School out in Sun Valley here in California. And then he also graduated from Cal State University Northridge. And I'm telling Carl he needs to get Greg on the show, because I would imagine that Greg Palast is a brutally honest individual. And I would bet he has some insights into who Stephen Paddock was, at least in the high school days. I've already heard Greg say that had it not been for certain things that happened in his life, he could see himself being so angry with the way the system is that he would have gone out and done some things. Because these guys were growing up in the 70s, and they were idealistic, and things didn't go as well in this country as it seemed to have been going for a while after the civil rights movement and women getting their rights. All of a sudden, we went from appearing to be a country where we're starting to treat our fellow human beings with dignity and respect on an equal basis, to all of a sudden, by the time Reagan gets in the White House, we start making that shift back to the right. And as folks like Newt Gingrich and them came in saying, we're taking the country back. And it's taken them 25 years, but hey, they've done it. So they've definitely taken the country back now. That's what they're doing. And, even today, Trump at the White House is passing some executive order because he knows Congress is not going to go along with him. So he's attacking the so-called Affordable Care Act with his executive orders. That's going to end up being in court, of course. Anything Trump does, if you notice, is always in court. He's already made people believe that the media is the enemy. That's what Hitler had to do, convince you not to listen to anybody but himself because he wants to be an autocrat. I even have cops on my closed sites for law enforcement saying, well, yeah, the media said this. No, the media didn't say a damn thing about the shooting. It was the officials, the Clark County Sheriff, along with a special agent in charge out of Vegas for the FBI, who put out the information that's now being questioned. For example, I had some LAPD cop who was also a chief at another police department. He posted on his Facebook, oh, the security guard saved the day and he's a hero. Well, I didn't waste any time jumping on that. By the way, folks, this was a week ago. I didn't waste any time jumping on that going, how the hell is he some hero? I go, it's tragic that a security guard got shot, but the fact that he got shot out of ignorance or exercising extremely poor tactics does not make him a hero. So needless to say, at that point, I had all kinds of LAPD cops just laying in on me, attacking me, and I go, why don't you folks start thinking like a cop and stop thinking like the typical ignorant citizen who may not know anything about police tactics? You're trying to tell me that a team of Las Vegas cops goes on the 32nd floor and they have a security guard lead them after he shot? Give me a break, folks. Once they find what floor this guy was on, at worst they're going to do is have the security guard give them the pass key, and they're going to make entry. They're not going to have no security guard accompanying them. And these folks just attack me. So what happens 2 days ago? Now it finally comes out the security guard had been shot at least 6 minutes prior to anyone in the concert venue being shot. And all of a sudden, all these cops who attacked me on Facebook have been deafening silent. Because I don't waste my time with garbage, okay? I deal with facts, and it's sad because we live in a society today where we just don't seem to have the capacity anymore to do critical thinking. We just repeat any garbage that is thrown at us, especially if it's something you already want to believe in without validating it. that security guard is no hero, and I get sick and tired of folks throwing that term hero around now like it really means something. I'm sad that a lot of those off-duty cops got shot there at that venue, but most of them aren't heroes either. The fact that they happen to be an off-duty cop and got shot, that doesn't make them a hero. Now, the ones who took the time to try to help somebody, like the brother who was just on, his brother-in-law, he was trying to help somebody when he was shot and killed. That's a hero. But we just use this term hero so loosely for anybody now who happens to be at the scene of a major incident. And, you know, everybody's branded a hero. And it's really sad. So just like that whole story that they had been repeating for a week, now it turns out that he'd been shot, the security guard had been shot at least 6 minutes prior to any shooting of anyone in the concert venue. And now folks are asking questions about why the hell did it take so long for law enforcement to respond to that tweet? And there's some heavy questions. See, the great thing today is we have so many folks out there with their own cell phones, smartphones, taking their own videos. I'm just going to say this to you, Mr. Nelson. You started this show off today by giving a brief biography about me, correct?
Correct.
And you told them how I'm a retired Marine Corps infantry officer. I'm a retired LAPD patrol supervisor. I am a FBI certified range master. By the way, I was also an NRA certified range master. In fact, I was a member of the so-called California range masters out here. But since they were a whole bunch of redneck white boys who were all into, back then they didn't call themselves the Tea Party, but they were all the Newt Gingrich types. I had to get out of that, so I'm not a member of that. In fact, I quit the NRA the same year that Daddy Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, quit, because we both agreed the NRA was no longer a gun safety organization, but nothing more than a political lobby group for the gun manufacturers trying to make money. So, would you say, oh, by the way, I was a rifle platoon commander, 81 millimeter mortar commander, heavy machine gun commander, 40 millimeter Mike commander. You think, Mr. Nelson, with my background, that I might know a little bit something about gunfire?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, folks, what I heard on Sunday night was more than one weapon being fired at the same time. So you guys believe what the hell you want. I know what the hell I heard, and I know the difference between echoes and gunfire, because these gunfire wasn't even possible to be echoes. I heard simultaneous gunfire, fully automatic, from different weapons. I'm just telling you what I heard. Now, that much I will share with you. There's some other things that I heard that night that I'm not going to share with you, and I've only shared with very, very select few individuals who have a law enforcement or intelligence background that I heard that night that I'm hearing different things about today. I suspect, how do I say this? Well, let me give you an example. It was I'm the person who escorted LAPD SWAT to the command post during the Bank of America North Hollywood shootout. And I'm thinking when I got there, how the hell could I get here? We still got hostages inside the Bank of America vault. So why are there so many FBI agents here already? So I immediately suspected what the FBI probably had those suspects under surveillance before that bank robbery started, but LAPD came in and rained on their parade. Because it was one of my former LAPD recruits who was on patrol with his training officer. The bank wasn't open yet, and he looked at his partner and goes, sir, it's not 9 o'clock yet. Why are there people inside the bank already? And then they put out a radio broadcast, and the rest is history. There was never an alarm triggered for that Bank of America. And I have a suspicion that FBI had those guys under surveillance. We're planning on taking those guys down. And LAPD ended up stealing the thunder from them. What I'm just telling you is this. Based on my experience, knowledge, background, and God knows some of the people I've trained that you don't even want to know about, and I'll never talk about, I suspect this whole thing was a tragic incident where certain federal agents had certain individuals under surveillance and didn't realize what was going to happen, and then things got out of control. So I know we're coming up on a break, but I'll just leave it there.
All right, let's take the break, and then we got a bunch of folks who have been holding one.
I bet they do.
Yes, they do. And if you want to speak to Mark from Anaheim, reach out to him at 800-450-7876. As he mentioned, he's dedicating the show to Dick Gregory. Had he lived, Dick Gregory would have been 85 years old today. We're going to take this break so our stations can identify themselves at the top of the hour. We come back with more questions for Mark from Anaheim right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Show do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of News Talk 1450 WOL.
And now back to the Carl Nelson Show on Washington, D.C.'s 1450 WOL Radio.
And thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim, dedicating the entire show to Dick Gregory. Had he lived, Greg would have been 85 years old today. We're going to take your phone calls. Before we take the calls, Mark, last time you were on, you said that whole thing with Jamel Hill was a distraction, and it's sort of morphed now into with the NFL players doing what they're doing and they're kneeling and stuff. Is it still a distraction? Is Mark there? We lost Mark? Hopefully we have not lost Mark.
I'm here. Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Well, before we go to Jamel and the NFL, I just want to say I also run 2 Facebook sites that are the special warfare community. And I have hundreds of former Marine Recon, Navy SEALs, Army Special Forces on those sites, okay? Most of those guys, just like most of these LAPD and LA Sheriff cops on the closed sites I run for them, they despise me, but they respect me because they know I don't lie to them. But in this situation, Mr. Nelson, I can't begin to tell you how many present and former U.S. Navy SEALs have contacted me saying they heard those tapes. There was more than one weapon being fired at the same time. I'm sorry, and they wanted me to share that with you. So I'm just letting you know. I've had quite a few former and present U.S. Navy SEALs who will never say this publicly, and they won't post on my Facebook site, even though they follow me. And they said there was more than one weapon being fired. So what was your question about Jamel and the NFL, sir?
Yeah, I was just speaking with Greg Pallas. So he says he's going to come on Monday, Mark. He's going to come on Monday.
So I wasn't making it up. Did he not know the shooter?
No, you weren't. Greg, yes, he says he knows the shooter.
Damn right he does.
He says he knows the shooter, so he'll be here Monday. But anyway, while I continue this conversation, let's go to Wes on line 1, calling from Atlanta. Wes, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Hey, Carl and Mark, man. Hey, today is my birthday, too, man. Okay?
Happy birthday, bro.
Yes, sir.
Happy birthday to ya.
Yes, sir. As long as I live, man, every time my birthday come around, people wish me happy birthday. I'm going to give Dick Gregory my salute, man. Okay? That's why really hurt me, Carl. Okay? I mean, I ain't never had nobody like my daddy died, man. That's my same birthday, Carl. But look here, Carl, man, you bury the hatchet and bring Darren on there, man. Because he just like Dick Gregory. He's doing some investigation on what happened to Barbara Dick Gregory, his circumstances, his demise, man. That's what Dick Gregory would have done for you or Mark, anybody, man. So please bring Darren on there, Carl. Please, y'all talk, man. You got to bury the hatchet.
Darren can call in anytime he wants. But you have a question for Mark.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, I got a friend that live out in Vegas, too, man. And she told me the same thing, that she was getting ready to go out there. And another friend called her and told her don't go. But it was multiple shooters. But, Mark, I want to ask you a question about what's going on in the Atlanta Mayor contest down here, man. What you know about that?
I'm sorry, what contest?
The mayor contest. They having the mayor race down here for the next mayor of Atlanta. What you know about that, man?
I'm sorry, brother. I haven't been following Atlanta. So I guess with everything that's been going on, I've been kind of confining most of my attention to what's been going on here on the West Coast, because right now we have 27 brush fires going on, including some in neighborhoods right here in Orange County and up in wine country of California. we still have more than 300 people missing right now from brush fires. So I could not give you any information whatsoever about Atlanta.
Yes, sir, man. I wish Carl would give you my number, man, so we could talk, man, because I don't know, man. Something about October 12th, man, with me and information, man. But Carl, I let somebody else talk, man.
Right.
I'm still every day.
All right, thanks, Wes. 800-450-7876 is the number to call. Speak to Mark from Anaheim. Go ahead, Mark.
What was your question about Jamel and the NFL? What do you want to know?
No, because you said the last time it was a distraction, so I wanted to find out if you still feel it's a distraction.
But I have a question for you. Now that Jamel has this 2-week unpaid vacation, hey, you think she'll go out with me? No, it's a distraction. But look, folks, remember I told you this on October 12th. The protest is going to end because much of that protest has nothing to do with patriotism. Colin Kaepernick had been quietly protesting on the sideline long before some white sportscaster decided to put the focus on him. He never asked for any attention. He did it on his own. People on the team knew about it, and nobody said a damn thing. It's only because John McCain, one of the few times I give John McCain any credit, John McCain and a few other U.S. senators started inquiring into why are professional sports receiving U.S. taxpayers' money. Now, up until 2009, the players didn't even come out the locker room before the national anthem was played. Folks get so impassioned to the point of violence over this red, white, and blue. If you look at the way they display the United States flag in most of these so-called patriotic events, it's not even proper protocol. It's like, I love these good old white boys out here, my redneck friends, and they got their big old U.S. flag in the back of their truck. The only proper way to display a U.S. flag on a vehicle, you have to have it on a flagpole on the front bumper of the car. So I know they mean well, and they mean well in their heart, but see, if they're going to sit there and talk about the proper protocol, know the proper protocol before you start telling somebody else what they can and cannot do when the flag is being flown or the national anthem is being played. Now, with the NFL, once Congress cut off the federal funding for all these so-called phony patriotic games, which was nothing but to try to recruit people for the military, and I hate that term, recruit people for the U.S. Armed Forces. That's when people started trying to play this game and saying, oh, you're not patriotic. But more importantly, so remember I told you this on October 12th, there were a few legitimate brothers and some white boys out there who supported Colin, and they're legit. But the vast majority of NFL guys, they didn't do it because of Colin. They did it because right now, as we keep improving and moving on in the technological age, Netflix, Google, Facebook, Amazon, they're negotiating contracts behind the scenes with the NFL. The NFL players were being left out of the bargaining table. That's when they started taking a knee. Now that they've been told that they're going to get a much bigger slice of the pie once these deals go through these digital websites that are going to be carrying the NFL, the protest is over. You mark my words. I told you that on October 12th. And so for those folks who were legit, Colin Kaepernick, he won't get a job. Those who supported Colin Kaepernick, if they keep continuing, they're going to lose their jobs. Remember, I told you this on October 12th.
You know what you're saying about Netflix and those streaming devices? The same thing is going on in Europe with the soccer games.
Exactly.
And it's causing a lot of problems.
Exactly.
They're negotiating big dollars to stream these games.
And they're not including the players.
Not surprising that it's here. Right. It's what the players are going to cut out.
In fact, if you folks don't know it, this is a devastating year for the U.S. because Mr. Nelson, the colored boys from Trinidad, knocked the U.S. team out of their chances of going to the World Cup next year in Russia. The U.S. is out.
And then Fox loses a lot of money because they have the contract to carry the World Cup.
There you go.
So, without the U.S. playing and all these U.S. eyeballs watching the games now, they've just lost a lot of money and a lot of sponsorship.
And so what I'm trying to tell you folks is that's what the knee is all about. It's always about the money. And now that the NFL players have agreed to the deal that they're going to get once this is streamed in all these digital network sites, the protest is over. Now, what will happen, the managers and the coaches and the owners will come out and say, we're going to pass a law, you will stand up for the national anthem and make it look like, they're back in charge. And, the white rednecks who call themselves patriots, but they're really nationalists, they're going to go victory. Donald Trump, and by the way, like last weekend, for example, this past weekend, Pence goes to a game, right? That whole thing was staged. As soon as Pence left that game, he was down here tying up traffic in L.A. Oh, of course, the media out here didn't complain about him tying up traffic the way they complain every time Obama came to Southern California. So I guess when Obama was president, he was guilty of riding while black because he was tying up traffic. Nobody said a damn thing about Pence coming down here and tying up traffic on Sunday and Monday. So what I'm just telling you, that whole thing was staged by Pence. Pence hadn't even been to an Indianapolis Colts game since back in 2014. That whole thing was staged. It's all a game to distract you because right now, folks, what are we talking about? Weinstein. What we're not talking about, you got black folks, primarily black folks, in Barbuda. Barbuda is a place now which, for the first time in who knows how long, has no inhabitants. You got black folks from Antigua. Wiped out. You got black folks all over, predominantly, black folks all over the Caribbean, wiped out by Hurricane Irma and Maria, and nobody's talking about it. And as soon as Trump went down there, started tossing out paper towels to all the Puerto Ricans who, are of fair skin, he showed them how he cared about them. And now he's saying, well, FEMA can't stay down here forever. Once people started asking, why is Trump treating the Puerto Ricans who are U.S. citizens the way he was, you're being distracted with Weinstein. Now, Weinstein is scum. Oh, well, how does that affect you? But for those black folks from Puerto Rico, let me tell you something. If they were smart, they should all leave Puerto Rico and go to Florida because Florida would never be a red state again. And then you'll see Trump and all these white boys on Capitol Hill get together and give Puerto Rico whatever the hell they want.
Also, Mark, let's not forget the Virgin Islands. Everybody's talking about
the Caribbean. Listen.
Yeah, the U.S. Virgin
Islands. I coach
Islands.
Female surfers, dude. One of my number one surfers, she's from St. Bart. They got hit. When I was at that contest trying to avoid going to Brother Greg's homecoming, I was with Maud LaCar. My profile photograph on Facebook right now is Maud LaCar. Maud LaCar is from St. Martin. St. Martin got devastated. One of my top surfers, Tessa Tyson, who I've dedicated shows to on this before, she's from St. Bart. I didn't hear from her father for more than a week. Nobody's talking about it. And for you folks out there who really care, and if many of you, and I always recommend that you become a member of a credit union so you don't get gouged by the banks. The National Credit Union Association is the only one that I trust to send money to those folks. But we got a break coming up.
Hold that thought right there. We got to take a quick break and check the traffic and weather. Our last look, actually, right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450, WOL, where information is power. And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim, and as you mentioned at the top of the show, dedicating the show to T. Gregory. He lived, he'd been 85 years young today. Mark, I'm going to let you finish up with what you were saying, and we got a bunch of folks still holding for you.
Well, I'm just saying, it's really sad because most of the media had never really covered the U.S. Virgin Islands. Didn't say much about, even it's sad. I don't think that most folks in this country even realize that Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens. And I don't know if you heard the latest what Trump said.
No,
but he comes out and says, well, FEMA can't stay down there forever. I don't recall him saying to people in Houston that FEMA couldn't stay there forever. Nobody intends on FEMA staying there forever. It shows, the overt disdain. But Mr. Nelson, I've been coming on your show now. I came back on your show back in 2012, and I told your listeners in 2012 about the austerity going on in Greece, and that same type of austerity was going on in Puerto Rico. Now, you got Hillary Clinton, because, black folks still love Hillary Clinton. She and her family and her brother have made so much money off of Haiti. I still don't know what happened to all the humanitarian aid money that was supposed to go from the earthquake, but somehow it got funneled into the Clinton Foundation. And now Trump and his vulture capitalists plan on doing the same thing to Puerto Rico. They have been squeezing Puerto Rico for years. Now, I will have to give President Obama a little credit. President Obama tried to get some legislation passed that was going to help Puerto Rico. At the time, the one Republican who claimed that he was going to help President Obama was, he even hate to mention his name. I'll just say a Cuban out of Florida. And then he reneged on his promise, and the deal never went through, and Obama was able to help more than he was able to help Puerto Rico. And I reminded your listeners when we had the Pulse shooting, and by the way, we still haven't heard how many people from the Pulse shooting may have actually been shot and or killed by the Orlando Police Department. That's been more than a year. Of course, with Jeff Sessions in there, we probably never will help. But the thing is, I'm just saying, Puerto Rico gets treated like crap. They always have. And, I mean, for Trump to be throwing out paper towels and now saying, well, FEMA can't stay down there forever, these folks need to start helping themselves, it just shows you the overt disdain and disgust. Because, folks, you need to understand something. Unlike the folks that were in that room with Herr Trump when he's tossing out paper dolls, the vast majority of folks in Puerto Rico look like Carl Nelson and Mark from Anaheim. Let's take some calls, sir.
Yeah, and I'm just, again, reiterate, the Virgin Islands is not even being discussed. And I know we have listeners down there. There's at least one brother, he calls in all the time from St. Croix. He's a member of the Nation of Islam. He only calls when we're discussing something to do with the nation.
Well, and that's why I used to love it. Because you were at WSRF. You were at WSRF, and the great thing when I did radio shows with you out of Florida, we had so many brothers and sisters from the diaspora that were so much more knowledgeable about what's going on besides being programmed by the U.S. media. And it's sad because a lot of those folks, nobody's hearing and nobody's sharing their stories. Nobody's telling you what they need. But what I was saying before the break, now, I was a lifeguard for many years. And, hell, I've given gallons of blood to the Red Cross. Now, I will still tell folks out there listening, give blood to the Red Cross. But as far as giving money, I have talked to too many people now from the Caribbeans who are very disgusted with the International Red Cross. And I would suggest if you want to give financial donations, the only organization so far that I would recommend is the National Credit Union Association. And trust me, I'm not going to share this with you unless I've done my homework. But the money that they receive for this type of disaster goes to the people who need the disaster. And sadly, most people don't even know about it. But the National Credit Union Association is tied into the International Credit Union Association. And a lot of those folks who look like Carl Nelson and myself on that island were credit union members too. But they're not just for the folks who were members. But I'm just saying, be very careful who you send money to help out. Because many of them are not sending the money to the people who need it, and many of them are scam artists. But when it comes to the help that the Virgin Islands needs right now, and especially Barbuda and Antigua, and we got black folks from L.A. and all over this country right now who are from those regions, and nobody's talking about their plight because we're talking about some damn Weinstein doing something in Hollywood that we've known Hollywood has always been about, Hollywood Babylon. That's not by accident. That's a distraction, folks. Meanwhile, Trump is passing executive orders behind the scenes, and you don't hear a damn thing about it. So I hope that answers the question, sir.
All right. 800-450-7876. Ron, he's calling us online, too. He's from West Palm Beach in Florida. Ron, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Thank you again, Mark, for coming on. And I take your knowledge very well, and you make me learn more every time. I have two quick questions, if that's okay with you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my first question is about Bernie Sanders. He's been doing everything he can for the people. He was at Standing Rock. He's fighting for Medicare for all. Is he the real deal, and should we back him for 2020? What do you see? Is he a CIA agent? Is he working with Trump? Is he working against the Democrats? What's his deal?
And your second question, sir?
And it's pretty off topic. And it's about JFK, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to.
What's the question, sir?
The question is, who was in that car ride in Dallas next to Jackie? Was it Tippit or was it JFK? Because I heard you and the late Dick Gregory talk about Tippit, and Dick Gregory once said that JFK died in 1973. And his body was thrown in a casket with holes and sandbags in it. So I just want to clarify which is true, and hang up and listen. And thank you again.
Yes, sir. All right, so for Ron out of West Palm Beach, let's start with Bernie Sanders. I have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders. When Bernie Sanders first started running, I came on the show with Mr. Nelson and said I would not endorse anybody who was running for president in 2016, and that includes Bernie Sanders. However, I said if you're going to choose between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders was out in the trenches in the civil rights movement when Hillary Clinton was a Barry Goldwater girl. So while she's trying to purport herself as being supportive of the civil rights movement, she was in with the John Birch Society. Okay? And I challenge somebody to come on the show and tell me I'm lying to you. So Bernie Sanders has demonstrated his ability to work for the good of all people. However, I will tell you this. You just had this shooting in Las Vegas. You're not going to hear too much from Bernie Sanders about that shooting because he gets a lot of money from the gun lobbyists. You know, everybody thinks the gun lobbyists come out of the South. During the Revolutionary War, most of your gun manufacturers, even to this day in the United States, are in the New England states. So I wasn't surprised when they had the shooting at Sandy Hook. Oh, I'm sorry, that didn't happen either. That was fake, according to Alex Jones. But Sandy Hook happened less than 1,000 yards from the second largest gun lobbyist group in this country, and most folks don't even know that. When you look at Colt manufacturing, they're out of Connecticut. Most of these major gun manufacturers, they don't come from the South. They're out of the New England states. And Bernie Sanders takes money from the gun manufacturers. So I'll just say this about Bernie Sanders. If Bernie Sanders was ever to become a major threat to either party, there are some things that they have on Bernie that then you'll hear about it. As long as he's not a real threat, you're never going to hear those things revealed. You don't stay that long in government without being dirty. I'm just being brutally honest. They're all dirty, okay? As far as Tippett, for those who don't know, J.D. Tippett was a cop out of Dallas, Texas, who many folks said was a dead ringer, no pun intended, for John F. Kennedy. And if you ever see the movie, one of the movies I do recommend about the assassination of Kennedy is a movie called Ruby, which basically talks about Jack Rubenstein, that most folks call Jack Ruby. But there, Jacoby, who played in the X-Files, he plays the character of J.D. Tippett. Now, you don't know, once again, they don't know how much you know when you watch the movie. But in the movie Ruby, you will see David Duchovny play the role of J.D. Tippett in the Carousel nightclub. J.D. Tippett was supposedly the cop that was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, even though I was told J.D. Tippett was killed with 38 long bullets, and Lee Harvey Oswald had a 38 short that can't carry long bullets. And as far as being in the car with Kennedy, perhaps Brother Greg knew something I don't know. I've never heard that, and I've never had anybody suggest that to me. But what I was told, Tippett was shot and killed in a theater in a staged attempt to implicate Lee Harvey Oswald. But I would just say, when I say staged attempt, one of my mentors was L. Fletcher Prouty. He's the one that's depicted in the movie JFK by Donald Sutherland as Colonel X. And L. Fletcher Prouty was sent out of the country. Like myself, I wouldn't go along with something like that. Well, L. Fletcher Prouty would never go along with that. He was sent out of the country on an errand to do for the United States Department of Defense because he was working at the Pentagon. And he's reading a newspaper in another country, and they already had Oswald's name in that newspaper, and that's impossible because Oswald hadn't even been named as a shooter in the U.S. yet. So I'm just letting you know, from what I've been told, Tippett was killed in the theater, and I have never heard that Tippett was in the car with Jackie Kennedy, but perhaps Greg knew something I didn't know.
Greg talked about the JFK's brain. Something happened to Parker.
We all want to know about Kennedy's brain, Kennedy's brain, lost by the government. That's insane. How can you lose the president's brain? What do you want to know, Mr. Nelson?
So, what happened to the brain?
Good question. I'll just tell you this. Trump is the president now, and that's kind of sad because Bill Clinton was actually the one who got legislation passed during his administration that they were going to open some of those files on Kennedy this year. But since Hillary didn't get elected, you don't hear anybody talking about it. And I will tell you this, folks. Many of the folks that Trump's appointing right now, his so-called drain the swamp, are some of the same players that were involved in the Iran-Contra hearings, including a female that he's appointing right now as the Deputy Secretary of State. But we got a break coming up, Mr. Nelson.
Well, we'll take the break, and I'll let you answer if you want. We'll take some more calls right here at 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark from Anaheim right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Real name is real not from Anaheim, but that's a whole other story. And we're dedicating the show to Dick Gregory. Today would have been his 85th birthday, and if you're in the Southern California area, we'll tell you where you can see the play that Joel Morton stars as Greg, as produced by John Legend. It's going to be in the Beverly Hills area, and it opens Friday, tomorrow. But anyway, Mark, you want to answer about the brain, or you want to take another call?
No, I'm done with the brain, but I just wanted to say that, because I know folks out there taking copious notes. The first movie I recommended during this show today was White Sands. Based on my background, my experience, who I've dealt with in the past, when I look at the shooter in Las Vegas, he reminds me of the character portrayed by Mickey Rourke in the movie White Sands. That movie came out in the 1990s. It stars William Dafoe, Samuel Jackson, and Mickey Rourke. And the second movie I just recommended was Ruby. If you have never seen a movie, I highly recommend it. Ruby played in one theater in Orange County. It only stayed in the theater for 5 days. And the theater I went to, I talked to the manager. They were not allowed to put up any advertisement posters for that movie. In other words, the movie came here, but they did not want you to see it. I highly recommend you see the movie Ruby.
All right. 800-450-7876. Line 4, Prince is calling us from Ohio. Prince, you have a question or comment for Mark from Anaheim?
No sex with dogs. Sorry.
Quit talking about my state. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Mark from Anaheim. It's kind of interesting that the NFL have all these things going on, players doing this and doing that, but one thing that people haven't really discussed is the NBA. Those players, and LeBron was one of the first ones last year, he refused to stay at the Trump Tower because, when these teams travel, they stay at these particular hotels. And you got more and more teams already coming out this year saying they're not going to stay at the Trump Tower. So how do you feel, Mark, that the NBA players now saying they don't want to stay there, and that's going to obviously affect Trump's pocketbooks with these teams starting to pull out and not wanting to go there to spend the night when they go to these various cities to play games?
Yeah, well, I only wish that more elected officials did not stay at Trump hotels, because my whole thing is this, okay? Now, I will tell you, folks, this is purely speculation on my part, but I truly believe that when Donald John Trump stated during the primaries, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and they will still vote for me, I don't believe he was speaking about the voters in the general public. I believe he was speaking about the Republican National Convention, because they hadn't decided yet who was going to be their nominee. I believe so many elected officials, both from the Democratic Party as well as the Republican Party, have stayed at Trump's hotels, his golf courses, whatever, his resorts. They got videotapes, which, by the way, Mr. Nelson, I asked you this, Mr. Nelson. What city besides Las Vegas, what city compares to Las Vegas when it comes to surveillance cameras and videotapes?
Wow, that's a tough one.
There is none. So how come we're not really seeing what's going on there? You telling me with all these casinos and hotels in Vegas, we can't really see what happened that night? Folks, you're being had. But I say that because you stay in these Trump hotels and you gamble in his casinos. He probably has elected officials who owe him money from gambling vices, along with having videotapes of congressmen with little boys and little girls or whoever. And that's why you don't hear them talking about impeaching him, because he's got them all right where he wants them. So when it comes to the NBA, who, a lot of white folks tell me call them nothing but Africans, the NBA now is talking about not staying at Trump's hotels, and that's all well and good, but the NBA players don't make that decision. That comes from the NBA owners, and most of the NBA owners, just like most of the NFL owners, are Trump supporters. In fact, Michael Jordan's the only black owner or co-owner of an NBA team?
Right, right.
How far would that go?
Let me tell you guys a quick story before I get off here.
me and my wife had to take a trip to Chicago.
My
wife? And she made a mistake. And she booked the hotel. She thought she was booking on a Saturday. Come to find out, she booked on the Sunday. So we drive all the way to Chicago, and we get to the hotel, and you can't check in. And so I told her just to wait here. So I'm walking up and down the strip, talking about 3 o'clock in the morning. Every hotel is booked out except one, and it's the Trump Tower. I look at my wife, said, we're going to sleep in the car tonight, baby.
That's
well,
a man right there.
There you go. But Mr. Nelson, I owe an apology to your radio station assistant, because I called the station and she said she would call me right back before the show today. And for anybody who calls me, just be warned. I don't even check to see who's calling me, because I just use the term F Trump when I answer the phone, and I don't say F. So she's like, Mark? But that's I've been answering my phone like that since January. F Trump.
Oh. All right, Prince. Thank you. We're going to keep moving, though, because we're racing the clock. I got to ask you this. A tweet asked about the 25th Amendment, Mark.
Yes, sir. It's coming up. It's getting even closer now.
Right.
Because I'm starting to hear folks like Mark Levin now mentioning it. And with the 25th Amendment, basically for the folks who may not be familiar with this conversation, if you have enough states that are willing to hold an Article 5 convention, they basically can eliminate any power that the federal government has. And when it comes to the Republican Party, while most Democratic Party members focus on national elections, the Republicans are very shrewd when it comes to politics, and they focus on local elections. They have now created so many state judges that are Republican, governors, state Congress, that they have, I believe, just one state shy of their Article 5 convention. And with the Article 5 convention, basically they can null and void the U.S. federal government. Now, when it comes to the 25th Amendment, what Mr. Nelson's alluding to, the 25th Amendment didn't come into power until JFK was shot, because the question came up. If JFK was a vegetable, which I'm sure that's what the caller was alluding to when he said, Brother Greg said Tippit was the one in the car with Jackie and JFK was buried later. If John F. Kennedy was a vegetable and couldn't function as a U.S. president, there was no law at the time passing that power down to the vice president. And that's where the 25th Amendment comes from. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, there are certain people in D.C. who are sharing stories. In fact, I believe the New York Times, and maybe the Washington Post, but some very prominent newspaper is reporting that no less than 2 people inside the White House are saying Donald Trump has lost it. That he's walking around the White House talking to the paintings, saying crazy things like we need to increase the nuclear arms by tenfold in the U.S., a whole bunch of other crazy stuff. But basically, from the time that his buddy, who he endorsed in Alabama, lost the election, Donald Trump, being the narcissist who he is, who needs to be liked, and if you notice, he retaliates against anybody who says something negative about him. He has lost a lot of confidence in himself, and he's losing what little mind he had before he ever went to the White House. Now, whether this is true or not, there have been several members of the White House staff who refuted these alleged rumors, but there have been 2 sources that, of course, wouldn't go on record and publicly identify themselves that have talked to the news media and have stated there's serious talk now within the Republican Party to have Donald Trump removed under the 25th Amendment because of his instability and inability to be rational, sane, and cogent to be a United States president.
Wow. What are they going to wait till he gets ready to hit the red button, or what? Gang tackling? I mean,
you're on a roll today, Mr. Nelson.
No, I just didn't wonder what's it going to take for them to.
I told your listeners, listen to me. Korea is not a threat. So let me just put this to rest right now. Let me just tell you, folks, okay? If you're worried about Korea getting attacked, just remember this. You don't see any damn U.S. citizens who are stationed in Korea sending their families home. We got schools, we got daycare centers. There are a whole lot of U.S. Armed Forces dependents in South Korea. When you start seeing them hauling ass, then you be concerned. Until then, it's all BS. But, yeah, I know what you're saying, Mr. Nelson. What are they waiting for?
All right.
The point is, you get rid of Trump, you got Pence. You ain't saying nothing until you get Pence.
All right, let's keep moving. 800-450-7876. Ray's calling us on line 6. He's in New York City. Ray, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Right, yeah, thank you. Now, Mark, I'm going to go to questions at you. I listened to it when it was happening. I heard the gunfire. I agree with you. It probably was not echoes. You had talk show hosts here in New York said they had their gun people, and they said possibly it was. You're probably correct. It was not. The two questions. One, the laptops. Now, I'm not surprised they didn't find a note, but I heard that they were up to 6 laptops. So I'm thinking now with the present-day technology, more than likely, if there was a note or information or manifesto, possibly it was on a flash drive, thumb drive, or on the inside one of those laptops. The other question I want to give you is, one you asked about the laptops. The other is, do you think, I forget the Secretary of State, his name, the guy from Exxon, do you think he really did call Trump an effing moron?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
I've already heard.
Right, hang on, fellas. We'll deal with the laptop on the other side. We got to take this quick break. 800-450-7876. A toll-free worldwide to speak to Mark from Anaheim. Your calls are next. This big show rolls on from FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power. Today would have been his 85th birthday. If you're in Southern California, his stage play opens tomorrow in Beverly Hills at the Lovelace Studio Theater. That's on 9390 North Santa Monica Boulevard. The play produced by John Legend and starring, what's the brother's name who's on the show again? Oh, Joe Morton is playing Dick Gregory. Those of you who went to Greg's Going Home service, you saw a little bit of the show that Joe put on at the service there. And Greg's last one, at least one of his last public appearances was at the Power Talk Conference, Power Talk 4 in June. And the DVDs of his last appearance are now available, along with Tony Browder, Dr. Claude Anderson, Dr. Pat Newton, Dr. James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, also Dr. Umar Johnson, and some more of the folks are on there as well, including the tour that Tony took some of those speakers there, and a lot of our listeners to the museum, the Black Museum, and all of that's on there. For more information, go to powertalkseries.com. So let's go back to Mark now. Mark, you want to respond to Ray's question about the laptops?
The laptop, he was asking me, did the Secretary of State call Trump
effing moron, and also the question about the laptops.
Oh, I got that. Dude, I write everything down, brother. I write everything down.
Well,
so let me just address this about the State Department, okay? Yes, he did call the president an effing moron, but let me tell you something that's very serious about the State Department. Just like with the Reagan years, I came on the show before Trump even got elected, before he swore in, and I stated that during my lifetime, there's been no presidential administrations that have been more corrupt than the Ronald Reagan administrations. In fact, for you folks who may not realize this, practically everybody in Ronald Reagan's first administration were either indicted, fired, or forced to resign before the first 4 years was up. Mr. Nelson, how many people are left in Donald Trump's administration from when he swore in?
That's a good question.
Exactly. So my point is, I told folks, if you thought Ronald Reagan's administrations were corrupt, Donald Trump hadn't even sworn in yet, and his administration was far more corrupt than Reagan's. Now, I say this to you because, just like with Reagan, and by the way, if you folks don't know this, Reagan was a John Birch Society member, Donald Trump's John Birch Society. Trump has specifically appointed people to federal organizations and agencies that are there to destroy those federal agencies. When it comes to the State Department, his administration has destroyed the State Department. The reason why I came on this show 5 years ago and so I could tell that this country was headed towards a civil war or a World War II, a World War III, well, it's really ramped up now. We negotiate, we discuss. Under the Trump administration, we have very few individuals now within the State Department who have the capability of talking to world leaders and eliminating or minimizing risk to going to war. And Trump's administration has emasculated the State Department. And like as I already told you earlier, somebody who Trump is about to appoint as Deputy Secretary of State was involved with the Iran-Contra hearings. That's the kind of people they're bringing back into the administration. So as far as the laptop, brother, this is where I can't share with the listeners what I have shared a little bit with certain individuals still within law enforcement. This is an ongoing investigation. Let me just make this very clear to you folks. What's going on in Las Vegas involves national security. There's a lot more going on here than you could ever imagine, and that's why I strongly recommend you see the movie White Sands. I'm not going to discuss the laptops, and I'm not going to discuss anything that I heard specifically about him other than I will tell you he was a defense contractor, and he reminds me of the guy who played the character that Mickey Rourke played in the movie White Sands. I hope if you folks take the time to watch that movie White Sands, you'll go, now I know what Mark's talking about, but as far as the laptop, I can't talk about that, brother. All right, thanks a lot. All right. Understood.
Thanks, Ray. And Mark, thanks to Mark, Greg Pallas, to call us back, and he's going to be on Monday. Greg Pallas went to school.
Hey, what do I know?
So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's keep going.
But before you go, Mr. Nelson, so let's just get this clear for some of the listeners who may have tuned in late. I came on this show today, and I said, because Mr. Nelson put me on the spot, back in December, Dick Gregory and I came on this show to discuss how Donald Trump and his Republican Party stole the election. I thought that somebody else was going to be on the show with us, but unfortunately, Carl brought him on in the third hour, so I had to call back in. That individual is Greg Pallas. So for you folks who may have tuned in late, the shooter in Vegas, Steve Paddock, went to high school out here in L.A. County, Sun Valley, California, and graduated from Cal State Northridge. Greg Pallas knew him very, very, very well when they went to high school together in Sun Valley. So was I making that up, Mr. Nelson?
No, you weren't. Because you called and confirmed.
Did he ask you how did you know?
Well, I'm talking to you on the phone and talking to him on the phone, so it was kind of
okay. So I'm just
a long conversation.
So I'm just going to say this. So for you folks who think I'm making stuff up, trust me, I will never come on this show and lie to you, provide you with any misinformation or disinformation. And I'm thankful that Carl Nelson does follow up when I send him recommendations, because many of the folks who come on this show are folks that I refer to Carl Nelson, because I want them to say what I can't say, because I will get into trouble. So let's take some more calls, sir.
800-450-7876. Johnny's calling us from Long Beach, California. He's on line 3. Johnny, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Carl, how are you doing, Mark? Mark,
brother, I want to thank you, brother. I want to thank you because you constantly follow me on Facebook, but more importantly, you share stuff that I post on my Facebook site, and I thank you for that.
You put the truth out there, Mark. That's all I'm doing, is just providing everybody with the truth. Okay, question. There was a conference just not too long ago. It had some hackers, 25 hackers. They had voting machines in a few minutes. The voting machines, they're vulnerable. Another one. The guy in that hotel, were those windows? Can they stand? Weren't they? They couldn't stand the wind pack. The winds of 800 miles an hour. And this guy knocked the windows out. And where did the glass go? Did it come inside the hotel? Did it hit the ground? Okay.
Okay.
Can you answer those questions, or did you know about those?
Okay.
How could he? How was it possible to knock the windows out? Not only that, Mark, this guy. You would think you see his physical physique. You think he can handle those weapons like that? I'm just asking questions, man. All right. Okay. You got other calls. You run up because the clock. So just if you can answer those for me. Thanks.
All right. First, the hackers conference. Sadly, in this country, the League of Women Voters was replaced, and once they were replaced, many, if not most, of your voting is done now by groups using the old Diebold machines, the same companies to make most of your old ATM machines for banks, and anybody who can park their vehicle near a polling booth can change the votes. they can change it where the machine reads the results of a vote wrong. So they need to get rid of all these machines. They should go back to hand count ballots. As far as the windows in the hotel, first I want to tell you all the windows were not in the same lobby, same suite. Apparently, this guy had rented those rooms. I don't know if you know aware of this, Mr. Nelson, but he had rented those rooms on the 25th. And what he did was, the reason they were looking for his girlfriend, because he had the suite, but he also rented a room adjacent to the suite under his girlfriend's card or whatever. So when you look in that hotel and folks are saying, how come these two windows are so far apart? One's in a suite and the other one's in the room that's adjacent to the suite. I don't know as far as how much wind capacity it would take. I just find it interesting that they claim that he knocked the windows out with a hammer or some type of hammer-type material when he's got all these machine guns just to shoot the windows out. So I can't really answer that question for Johnny. As far as I believe he asked the question, could one shooter fire those weapons? Well, I'll just say this. You can't fire two weapons at the same time, not the weapons he had. I can't answer this question. I can't. I'm just going to tell you this, folks. Most of what you're hearing is not true, and I'm sorry, Johnny. I can't answer that question. I can't answer that question. Okay. Not because I don't know some things, but because I can't. It's an ongoing investigation, and I'm not going to be the one put it out there.
All right. We're racing the clock, so let's keep moving. This is 800-450-7876. James is calling us. He's on line 1 from Washington, D.C. James, you're on with Mark from Anaheim.
Yeah, hello. I want to know, are you trying to say some of these mass shootings are Luciferian or ritualistic? And my last question is, should black folks arm themselves? I'll get off. Thanks.
Are some of them Luciferian? Folks, Luciferians, they're all Luciferians. There was a movie with Jada Pinkett that came out back in the 80s or maybe early 90s. It was called Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knights. I strongly recommend you folks see that movie. You know, it was before Jada went off the deep end and all that, and she was still smoking hot. But the thing is, in that movie, it shows you how certain folks in this country working for Lucifer are trying to find the keys to unlock the secrets. Right now in this country, you got algorithms going nonstop, like supercomputers going nonstop. Folks, look, if you don't believe in God, I can't help you. There's a war going on, a major war going on. And the Luciferians are trying to unlock the keys. And they got computers opening portals all over this planet. Believe what you want. I'm just telling you straight out, okay? I've been fighting these individuals all my life. And most of the so-called terrorist attacks are being orchestrated by like in this country, you got the far-right evangelicals who want a caliphate. In other countries, you've got the far-right Wahhabits, Muslims, who are orchestrating a caliphate because they want to bring this so-called holy war, thinking that's going to be the return of Christ or whoever they consider their Christ. But I'm just telling you, they're not satanic worshipers. They are Luciferians. And as far as when he says orchestrated, oh yeah, absolutely. Seriously. Very little in politics happens by accident. So I know we're running out of time here, Mr. Before we go, let me just say this for the listeners out there who may be new to the show and don't know who the heck they're listening to and why they should even listen to me. Mr. Nelson and I have been doing radio shows since May of 1992. In that time, nobody has ever been able to come on any of the shows with Mr. Nelson and say that I've ever lied to them, provided them with misinformation, provided them with disinformation. And there are times I'm not going to be able to answer your questions for, I'm not going to say national security reasons, just because they're ongoing investigations and I don't feel it's proper. I should be talking about it. But you can reach me at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101 on Facebook. Now that's a fan page, not a group site. But for those who found me, I'll refer you to Mr. Nelson. I'll call you later, and if my truck doesn't blow up.
We're late, folks. We're out of here. Stay strong, stay positive. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.